A couple weeks ago, I made a video challenging evolution's scientific foundations. On YouTube, it's approaching 3,000 views and just as many comments. But on X, it's reaching nearly 500,000 views after being shared by some major accounts. Praise God, the response has been incredible. But I've noticed something in these responses. People aren't discussing one of my video's most crucial points. In the second half, I talked about what happens when evolution replaces our human origins with animal ones. Think about it. If we're just evolved apes instead of God's image bearers, our lives lose their inherent worth, meaning, and purpose. This means power can reshape or eliminate us as it sees fit. Before World Wars I and II, this belief system was called social Darwinism, and I showed you quotes from Herbert Spencer, William Graham Sumner, and Ernst Haeckel, proving that these beliefs were real, including for the German National Socialist Party, aka the Nazis, and its leaders. Dr. Richard Weikart, author of From Darwin to Hitler, explains how the Darwinian worldview led to some of recent history's worst atrocities. And here's a clip of him speaking to the Discovery Science Institute about it.
In my book, in the chapter on Nazi propaganda, I have a short section on an SS pamphlet that was used to train the SS in their worldview. And it's divided up into class sections. So this was used like ideological training for SS. Not just SS, it says SS and police forces. So it was taught very forthrightly to the SS. They did make very clear the connections with the evolution of races and the racial struggle. It's not something that's hidden. And that's, again, why it's so remarkable that people make these ridiculous claims that the Nazis were creationists. They were outright claiming that they were using biological evolution for these things.
Of course, Hitler and the Nazis weren't alone in using Darwin to justify genocide. In 1861, when Karl Marx read On the Origin of Species, he wrote to his associate Ferdinand Lassalle, quote, "Darwin's book is very important and serves me as a natural scientific basis for the class struggle in history." End quote. Then, at Marx's funeral in London's Highgate Cemetery in 1883, Friedrich Engels said the following during the eulogy, quote, "As Darwin discovered the law of evolution in organic nature, Marx discovered the law of evolution in human history." End quote. Now, in the next few minutes, I'll be reading some extended quotes. Please bear with me. This is important. Following Marx and Engels, Vladimir Lenin had a high view of Darwin too. In The Atheist Syndrome by John P. Coster, he writes, quote, "The only piece of artwork in Lenin's office was a kitsch statue of an ape sitting on a heap of books, including Origin of Species, and contemplating a human skull." This comment in clay on Darwin's view of man remained in Lenin's view as he worked at his desk, approving plans or signing death warrants. The ape and the skull were a symbol of his faith, the Darwinian faith that man is a brute, the world is a jungle, and individual lives are irrelevant. Lenin was probably not an instinctively vicious man, though he certainly ordered a great many vicious measures. Perhaps the ape and the skull were invoked to remind him that, in the world according to Darwin, man's brutality to man is inevitable. End quote. The statue, called Ape with Skull or Affe mit Schädel, was made by German sculptor Hugo Reinhold. Lenin's successor, Joseph Stalin, then wrote in Anarchism or Socialism, quote, "Evolution prepares for revolution and creates the ground for it. Revolution consummates the process of evolution and facilitates its further activity," end quote. And to round out our pantheon of atrocities, Mao Zedong, who led the Chinese Communist Revolution, also embraced Darwin. Kenneth Sue, a student in 1940s China, later wrote, quote, "Though both Nazi German and Chinese communist soldiers survived the war, we were victims of a cruel social ideology that assumes that competition among individuals, classes, nations, or races is the natural condition of life, and that it is also natural for the superior to dispossess the inferior. For the last century and more, this ideology has been thought to be a natural law of science, the mechanism of evolution, which was formulated most powerfully by Charles Darwin in 1859 in his On the Origin of Species. 3 decades have passed since I was marched into the schoolyard to hear the rector contradict my family's wisdom with his Darwinian claim to superiority." End quote. Now, scholars have long studied the connection between Darwin and totalitarianism. In 1983, China scholar James Pusey wrote a 572-page book called China and Charles Darwin. Here's its description from Google and Amazon, quote, "Although Charles Darwin never visited China, his ideas landed there with force. Darwinism was the first great Western theory to make an impact on the Chinese, and from 1895 until at least 1921, when Marxism gained a formal foothold, it was the dominant Western ism influencing Chinese politics and thought. The authority of Darwin, sometimes misinterpreted, influenced reformers and revolutionaries and paved the way for Chinese Marxism and the thought of Mao Zedong. The story of Darwinism in China involves, among others, the most famous figures of modern Chinese intellectual history." End quote. James Pusey was a son of Harvard President Nathan Pusey, and Harvard University Press published the book. Now, what happens when you search for Pusey's book on Harvard's website today? A big fat 404 error. But genocide is so 20th century, right? Well, not so fast. As we enter our technological future, we face a new threat, transhumanism, and it too rests on Darwinian thinking. Consider, if humans keep evolving, what or who determines that path? Who decides what's right or wrong about our development? By what standard can we judge? This matters literally right now, because Elon Musk is promoting a transhumanist future where humans merge with machines through neural implants called Neuralink. Watch this short clip from Axios on HBO, where Musk lays out his vision.
The long-term aspiration for Neuralink would be to achieve a symbiosis with artificial intelligence, and to achieve a sort of democratization of intelligence, such that it is not monopolistically held in a purely digital form by governments and large corporations.
Basically, an effort for man to merge with machine in
Yes.
a healthy way.
Yes.
To beat machines, you basically have to merge with machines.
Most likely, yes. Essentially, how do we ensure that the future constitutes the sum of the will of humanity? And so if we have billions of people with a high bandwidth link to the AI extension of themselves, it would actually make everyone hyper smart.
From an evolutionary standpoint, how can anyone say he's wrong? Why shouldn't we merge with machines? And why shouldn't we create babies through ectogenesis outside the womb, destroying family and gender roles forever? It seems that's also the plan, because the podcast host Courtney Turner posted 2 revealing screenshots on X. The first from Forbes reads, quote, "Elon Musk's babies were conceived via IVF and surrogacy. Is it the future of reproduction?" End quote. Then from thepublicdiscourse.com, quote, "What the sexual revolution began by upsetting gender roles and obscuring the necessary link between marriage and procreation, the reproductive revolution continues, shattering our conceptions of motherhood and fatherhood and severing the bond between parents and children." End quote. In case you're still not seeing it, then another account on X made this observation on Courtney's post, quote, "We're supposed to do this evolution stuff. Only the leftists are against evolution and want to attack superior people and force everyone to mate inferior people. I include churches in the leftist category. Evolution extends to selection using technical means." End quote. Talk about saying the quiet part out loud. There it is in one tweet. First, evolution as an ongoing process today. Second, categories of superior and inferior people. This is social Darwinism. Third, eugenics or selective breeding. Fourth, evolution pushing back specifically against Christianity. And fifth, evolution taking on a technological dimension in our era. And if you still think transhumanism is fringe, here's Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum discussing it just this week.
I think we have to be prepared for a world where we see a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological dimensions. So it will be a world integrating the physical, biological, and the digital dimensions. So it will be a new world.
And this just in, as I was finishing this video and preparing to release it, I found this clip of Klaus Schwab's right-hand man at the World Economic Forum, Yuval Noah Harari. In 2018, Harari connected all of these dots. He claims that humans have the right to, quote, intelligently design ourselves independently from God aided by technology. Now remember, this was 7 years ago, before large language models like Grok and ChatGPT, before men like Elon Musk, who shares these same beliefs, had any access to the White House. So listen to this clip and ask yourself, do you think they've changed their minds?
All of life, for 4 billion years, dinosaurs, amoebas, tomatoes, humans, all of life was subject to the laws of natural selection and to the laws of organic biochemistry. But this is now about to change. Science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design and the intelligent design of our clouds, the IBM cloud, the Microsoft cloud. These are the new driving forces of evolution.
If our nature is fixed by God, we cannot be remade in any tyrant or technologist's image. But if our nature evolves in response to environmental conditions, those who control the conditions control us. But don't take my word for it. Here's Vladimir Lenin writing in an academic style at the tender age of 24. Quote, "Just as Darwin put an end to the view of animal and plant species being unconnected, fortuitous, created by God and immutable, and was the first to put biology on an absolutely scientific basis, so Marx put an end to the view of society being a mechanical aggregation of individuals, which allows for all sorts of modification at the will of the authorities, or, if you like, at the will of society and the government." End quote. Now I urge you to think carefully about these connections. Darwin's 20th century legacy was genocide wherever his ideas spread. At least 100 million dead. We must now ask what his 21st century legacy will be. So isn't it time to end this Darwinian fable for humanity's sake before it's too late?